Welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your host and resident idiot, Michael, and today we're getting back on track with a thorough review of the stunning Focal Radiance. Again, my French accent is pathetic. Now, the Radiance is a headphone graciously supplied by the fine folks at Audio 46. They are your headquarters for all things personal audio related. Anytime I want to get into trouble with my credit card, Audio 46 is usually my first stop. They know it. And there's so much trouble to be had there. I love this store, from the brand new Canera Nana 2.0 to the Estelle & Kern SA700. Vegas Gold, baby. Vegas Gold. Sorry, I get carried away. Audio 46 will hook you up with whatever it is you need. They price match. They deliver so fast. Free shipping in the U.S. Check them out. Great guys over there. And the supplier of so many mischievous things the Director's Garage gets into. Hey! Many of which I've purchased, but not today's Focal Radiance. First, we're going to go to a couple of headlines. Now, my contest winner, Sammy Anderson, got his P2s this week, but I still haven't heard from Manuel Arroyo with the HE5XX. Manuel, if I don't hear from you in a week or two, I'm going to have to draw a new winner. I want you to have these headphones, buddy, but I have no way of contacting you. So please email me at directorsgarage@gmail.com. It'll be right down there. And one sad note, we lost Rupert Neve on February 12th. Rupert designed some of the greatest audio desks in history. His inventions changed the way sound was recorded and mixed. Most of your favorite music went through one of his electronic circuits at one point or another. He was a legend. He was an icon. Rupert was 94 years old. And those are your headlines for today. Refinement, elegance. These are traits one looks for in a Bentley, and these are sound qualities that come to the fore in the Focal Radiance. When you hook up two brands with this much cachet, something special should happen, and today we're diving in to see what it is they've achieved. And I'm going to start as usual with Ergonomics, and I want to talk about the fit of the Radiance, and I have a few issues, one of which is clamping force. These push down tight on my ear, and I can actually feel my ear hit the inside of the cup here, this plasticky part, and it's not terribly comfortable over long periods of listening. Part of that is because this yoke here is made of metal, and on the Focal Utopia, this part is made of carbon fiber, which has a lot more flex to it. The metal gives it a lot more spring, and it pushes down tight. Now, the other part of it is these beautiful soft cups, and they feel amazing to the touch. Now, that's great, but the problem is that they give a lot. So when you combine that with the force, these don't have a lot of retention sort of spring in them to keep the headphone, the inner part of the headphone, off your ear. And it really tightens things up as far as, you feel a little claustrophobic in these things. Now, softness is usually a great thing, but in this case, it just doesn't quite work for me. The other issue I want to talk about is the cable, and this cable is just too short. I want to show you something. If I plug these all in and get them plugged up and wire them up, as I like to say, and then I put it in here. Look, if I go up right here, this is not a far stretch. If I just go up into the cord, look at this. This is not an arm's length away. It's about a meter long cable, way too short. Now, I can work it off my desktop, but that really keeps me from putting it on some of my better amps. I have to get right next to them to do the audition. It bothers me that now maybe the actual unit, if you buy it, because this is it's clearly a demo they sent me, comes with a longer cable. I'm not sure, but for basic purposes, this thing just too short for the Director's Garage needs. It's almost as if they took the Utopias, which has about a 10-foot cable, and undercompensated to an nth degree. Now, I will say this, though. There are positives. The headband is great on this. The headband is fantastic. It's much softer. It's actually the nicest of the Focal headbands, and it's not too wide. I prefer that. The cups are beautiful with a copper accent. They really class up the director's garage quite a bit, and they do bring that Bentley sort of feel to them, very upscale. The other thing is, check out these hinge pins. These things are like watch crowns. They're so beautiful. Amazing. Now, the Radiance sounds pretty flat to my ears. They fall more into that like reference tuning, definitely out of the fun category. And that's probably part of why my favorite music struggled to impress me during the What's in the Box and the First Impressions the other day. Now, these are more linear. And the thing is, I get linear every day with my work headphones. I have in-ears and I have over-ears that are all dead flat. So it's not something that I generally look for in a headphone that I'm buying for pleasure. Now, they are forgiving headphones, and that's one thing I will say. You can get away on these with 44.1 files or MP3 files without the things calling attention to themselves for bad sound quality. They really do smooth over the edges on some of those lower grade sound files. Which kind of moves us into sound, and I had trouble in the unboxing, as I said, finding music that works well with these headphones. I threw my favorite rock tracks at it, and well, that's just not what these headphones are about. It's not that the stuff sounds bad on them, it's just they don't really sound special, and I like for things to sound special. Even when I tried some of my more modern tracks, like hip-hop, and tried Bruno Mars on them, it was just a meh experience for me, and the Radiance really made me work to search and find tracks that really hooked up with them. So what I discovered is that these headphones are kind of like for the Grey Poupon set.
Thank you.
It's the folks that have the super fancy cars, as it turns out, and stuff that I could never afford. It hooks up with a specific type of music, and it turns out if you drift out of that lane, the headphones kind of veer into the ordinary sound. But put the right tracks with these, and it delivers the promise of what you'd expect of a collab between Focal and Bentley. And maybe not surprisingly, when it comes to music that put these headphones on track, it's stuff that's a little more refined, like classical and jazz, which is kind of the types of music I would listen to if I was cruising around in my Bentley. Which I'll never be able to do. Certainly not on the $35 we've made so far in the director's garage. The other thing I would say is that I put these headphones through a tube amp, and they really did perform better. And that's going to become apparent as to why when we get to Soundstage. So let's get started with imaging, and I would say that the Radiance images reasonably well, especially for their price point. I think things stay fairly well sorted across the soundstage. I think that they do lack that laser precision that you get of those higher end models, and I'll be the first to admit I'm a little spoiled after coming off of these higher end headphones that do these spectacular things. But the Radiance is very nice. I didn't take any issue with the imaging at all on this headphone. They're about upper to mid pack, which is kind of where I would expect a Focal Radiance headphone to belong. I will also give props to the dynamics. The dynamics seem fairly punchy to me. I had decent surprises. I was checking out some Joni Mitchell, as you'll refined music again, refined. I found that these are capable of presenting some nice moments to you. So next I'm going to look at detail, and what I would say about the Radiance is that they're reasonable but not remarkable. It's sort of like the first area that I felt like really kind of fell short for me, and part of that is my own snobbiness. As I'm holding a Bentley, a Focal for Bentley headphone, I'm going to talk about snobbery for a second, because the fact of the matter is that I'm so used to listening to the Utopia and its tremendous speed and detail and clarity and all of those amazing things that it does so well, that when I put these on, I'm a little underwhelmed. And now they're almost 1/4 the price of the Utopia, so they shouldn't super impress me, I don't think, on the level of the Utopia. So it's like, but I have that in my head, that sound. The difference, of course, is that the Radiance is made with a magnesium driver, and the Utopia, what you're paying for all that extra money, is the beryllium driver, which is a much faster material. I mean, it just gives you a faster, clearer sound. And, that's one of the cost savings points that they made at Focal when coming up with a mid-priced headphone. So it's kind of hard for me because I do feel that the detail isn't where I want it to be, but I also know that I am subconsciously putting it on a scale of, gosh, those Utopia sounds so good, and it's the same company. Now, the Soundstage to me on these, it's just not very impressive. These are very upfront and close. Things are very tight to your head. And again, they're physically tight to your head, and the Soundstage sounds really tight to your head. Running them through a tube amp does seem to open up the presentation a bit, so I did prefer them more with a tube in the signal path, but the Soundstage is not going to blow you away with this headphone at all. So let's talk about sound structure, and I'm going to talk for a little bit about the bass and the mids and the treble, but today I'm going to switch it up. We're going to do it in that order. I tricked you. Don't ask me. It's like a sickness. Now with the bass, I find the Radiance to extend deep into that sub-basement, and that's a really good thing. The only downside is that there's not a lot of lift there. There's not a lot of push there. So it makes the headphone a harder sell on things like pop music and rock tracks and hip hop and things, EDM, things that you want that bass presence for. They just don't hook up so well with that type of music. However, the bass is tight and detailed. And with classical music, you listen to something like deep woodwinds or brass or a timpani, these things come alive. Fantastic. And the same goes when you listen to a great jazz trio or folk music, things like that, things with instrumentation. Now the mids sound absolutely dead flat to me, and this is going to be a great thing if you're like trying to really assess some music for what it has, what it is you're listening to. The vocals are very well represented, and given that the bass is flat, the vocals really do cut through on the mix. But on tracks where the vocal frequencies are enhanced, it can sometimes come off as kind of overcompensated, and especially in that upper mid-range, they don't push shouty, but they do start getting a little close to that grating thing for my preference. Now the treble is very pleasant to me. There's some nice extension in the upper frequencies. It brings a nice shape to things like cymbal crashes, and even more so when the cymbals are ridden like with nuance, like when in a great jazz song. It's not a bright headphone, but it's not a muddied headphone either. I keep coming back to the word reference for some reason. Now in our music section today, I'm going to put the spotlight on Van Morrison. He's the Irish singer that gave us the garage band classic Gloria, written by Van when he was with a group called Them back in 1964. Now that band breaks up in like 1966, and Van pens his most played song of all time, Brown Eyed Girl, which peaks at number 10 in 1967. It was a pretty crowded year in music history. As far as great music, right? Now, Morrison claims, the story goes anyway, that he never received any royalties off of Brown Eyed Girl because of the record deal he had at the time. Imagine that. You put this thing on the air and you get nothing for it. Now, he next produces his masterpiece. It's called Astral Weeks. It's an album infused with nostalgia and soul. The whole album sounds like a poem to me. It drifts and turns and tumbles beautifully from track to track. But the album I'm going to talk about today is the follow-up to Astral. It's his album Moondance from 1970, and this is a 24-bit 192K example. Now Morrison's voice is on point on Moondance. It's a more sonically organized album than Astral Weeks, though perhaps not quite as visionary. The recording is about as perfect as it gets. This was recorded in New York City in 1969, and today I'm going to talk about the track Into the Mystic. It's this laid-back soundscape of a horn section, including a gorgeous tenor sax supplying the sound of foghorns. It's a song with grace, and that's something that the Focal Radiance really knows a great deal about. There's a great synergy between this album and the Radiance. It's this refined style of music where the Radiance really is most brilliant. And next up, I'm going to talk about Thelonious Monk and his album Monk's Music. Very good album, 16-bit, 44.1 this version. Thelonious is by far my favorite jazz musician. This album is recorded in a tight room. There's refractions in the reverb, this slap echo that you hear. It's just terrific on the Radiance. And what a lineup on this record. At 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, that separates the piano from the horns. John Coltrane and Coleman Hawkins on sax. Amazing world-class lineup there. And meanwhile, you've got Art Blakey on drums, another of my very favorite jazz musicians setting the rhythm, and he delivers a rousing solo in this track. This is tight, hot bebop. The one thing I would note is be careful of the version you listen to of this. There are a number of these recordings, particularly on Tidal, and they are not at all alike. There's a number of them that suffer from tape dropout. You can hear degradation in the recording from the tape getting damaged from wear. They have this thing called sticky tape where the magnetic particles sort of lift off of the emulsion and the backing. It chips away and it totally degrades the sound. The original Jazz Classics remaster of this album is a disaster. Just avoid it. One other track I want to talk about off this record, and that's Epistrophy. If you thought jazz was all about improv, this composition will show you how well great rehearsed musicians can play. Blakey is setting an incredible timing on this. It's really hard to track. His fills are top grade. Another killer solo in the middle of this one. The Radiance does such justice to this epic session. Monk wrote both songs that I'm referring to today. They're must-hears on this headphone. It was by far my favorite play on the Radiance. And one other Grey Poupon album while we're here in our music section. I'm going to call your attention to Bill Evans' Trio, Sunday at the Village Vanguard. It's a 24-bit, 88.2 recording, and the track I'm talking about today is Alice in Wonderland. The Radiance's imaging really comes out to play on this one. Evans' piano is super smooth, but it's the bass work that's delivered by Scott LaFaro. It's just crazy. He solos from the beginning to the end of the song, damn near, while still holding rhythm with the drums. Now, the bass is off to the right, and the drums kind of fill in the entire space with these refractions, and then Bill's piano is sitting here off to the left. And the amazing thing is that Evans' brilliance on piano doesn't really come out till later in the track. He's sort of holding back early on. But what I really get the greatest thrill out of is listening to the table conversations. This is such a precise recording. You hear conversations, because it's a lounge recording. You hear dinner plates clanking and things like this. It's just the coolest thing. Also, while we're here, let's check out My Man's Gone Now. It's a moody number that's composed by George Gershwin. This whole album is an absolute thrill of a recording. I advise anybody to check it out if you haven't heard it yet. I would also point out that classical music is really great on the Radiance. I checked out Beethoven concertos and symphonies and some Mozart and string quartets and just listened to a number of classical samples. I'm not the biggest classical follower, admittedly, but I do have some really good recordings, and classical is really an area where the Radiance shines. So much like the Focal for Bentley heritage, I found the Radiance to really excel when it was presented with what you might expect, music with elegance and nuance. Power tracks like things with driving bass and metal and hip-hop, pop music. I found myself kind of unimpressed with these headphones on those genres. but things get really exciting in a hurry when you present them with jazz and classical genres. So can I give the Radiance a recommendation? At $1,300, I gotta say these headphones left me wanting a little more. And I will full well admit that I have acquired a taste for some higher end headphones, as you well know from my past shows. But I haven't auditioned the Celestie, and I have a hunch that I would lean more toward the Celestie over the Radiance. And the Celestie costs less, so it left me wanting to hear the Celestie before I would endorse something like the Radiance. And I will tell you, I am a Focal fanboy. I like their general tone, but I suspect the Celestie is going to be a little more in my lane than the Radiance. But that said, if you are into jazz and classical music, I would say that these are worth checking out. Definitely give them an audition. I would also point out that at $1,300, it's a very crowded market at that price point, and there's a lot out there to audition. I wouldn't just limit yourself to this headphone. So it occurs to me that I don't really have a headphone in-house to do a fair shootout with the Radiance, so I'm kind of inclined to send these back now. And I, of course, can't thank Audio 46 enough, first of all, for all they do for the Director's Garage. Tony is just the best over there, but also for giving us the opportunity to hear and listen to and experience the Radiance. These are refined and stunning headphones. There's no question there is a great deal of engineering that went into these. And these, even though they're not for me necessarily, if you're into a flat neutral experience, these are going to be right in your lane. But no, I don't have any Grey Poupon, and in case you're wondering, I really just hate Dijon. So I'm going to ask you to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these types of reviews and you find them worthwhile. Coming up next, we're going to be doing another blind unboxing of a Linsol headphone. Thank you, Lillian Dang. These blind unboxings are really my very favorite types of episodes to do because there's just excitement in that, what is in here and what did they send us and how cool is it, you know, that kind of thing. Speaking of blind unboxings, I have another Audio 46 headphone sitting here, dying to find out what the hell they sent me. They always surprise me with something major. We'll be getting into those headphones soon. I also have another headphone that I purchased with my own cash. They're fairly new and they've been sitting in a box for nearly a month. I can't wait to hear those. There's a lot of buzz around that set. I can't wait to share them with you. And then there's another major project that I've started that's still a bit in our future. It's going to take some extra Director's Garage funds to complete. So give us a thumbs up if you liked today's episode. You can do the other thing if you think I totally missed the Focal Radiance experience. I'm okay with being wrong, you know, and of course I'm going to see you before you know it.